Okay, welcome everyone. This is Nobility's K through 12 ToolKit Tuesdays. I am Jessica J. McKay. I am the Community Programs Manager, and I am thrilled today to be part of our ToolKit Tuesdays series. This is a series that we started last year as a way to help parents and students that were kind of having to figure out learning at home, having to deal with all the different technologies. We wanted to bring it back again this year as well, as to start gearing us up for Access U and for our K-12 Access U satellite event that's coming up later this year. And what we're doing is highlighting some of those wonderful presenters and conversations that we had this past summer. We wanted to bring some of those back up here today. So I am thrilled. Today we are going to be talking about how to empower your instructional technology specialists. This is one of those things where I think we all know we should be doing, but we need to make sure that we are actually having those conversations, making sure we're making those connections, because it really is going to be the thing that makes or breaks your school district and the ecosystem of communication, collaboration, and equity for all of their students. So I am thrilled. Our guests today are going to be the Innovative Learning Department of Ysleta ISD. And I'm just going to take it away. I'm going to introduce them really quick, and then we're going to have a great conversation today. We do have slides. We'll make sure that they're up nice and pretty for you later, but if you want to go ahead, it is a bit.ly link that we've made. It is https://bit.ly/toolkit the abbreviation for Tuesday, Empower IT. So I'll read it one more time on that bit.ly tag. It's going to be capital T, capital K for toolkit. The Tuesday, the TUE will be capitalized. Empower, the E is capitalized, and then IT is capitalized at the end. Perfect. There we go. Mark saving me once again, putting it in the chat for us as well. All right, so I'm going to introduce our guest. I'm very thrilled to have them here today. Unfortunately, Larry Snyder was not able to make it. He was not feeling well. We want to make sure that he takes care of himself. He is a needed member over in that school district. So he was like, I'm not going to be able to make it. We said, please don't. Please get well. And then also we have our other two guests. I'm going to actually let you guys introduce yourselves and what you do.
Go for it, Eric.
My name is Eric Buenrostro. I am the Digital Resource and Content Specialist for Innovative Learning. And my primary role is to oversee the one-to-one initiative for all students and teachers in our district. We are one-to-one all the way from pre-K to 12th grade. That and along rostering for many educational resources, that's my primary role for the department.
And I'm Mesha Daniel. I am an Innovative Learning Specialist. What that means is I get the really cool job of getting to work with teachers, students, and administrators on how to use this technology, these new tools that we have access to, both digital and really handheld tools, seamlessly in the classroom. And we're hoping that it will always be seamlessly. Our fingers are always crossed on that. It doesn't always quite happen that way, but that's what my main job is we're just there, like we're support, but we want to kind of push them and give them a little bit of pressure too to get out there and use those tools. That's what they're there for.
All right. And just to kind of let everybody know, I previously worked with Ysleta District fairly recently until I moved out to Birmingham, Alabama, and I was the assistive technology specialist. So throughout the day, I'll be speaking to what my role had been previously as that AT specialist for the Ysleta District. So just to give you a little bit of background of who we're talking about when we talk about the Ysleta Independent School District, it is the third largest school district in El Paso, Texas. If you're not sure where El Paso, Texas is, just look at a map of Texas. You see the little bitty tip on the very south or on the west end, right when you're getting into Mexico, New Mexico. That is El Paso. We have about 60 campuses, give or take, because last time I checked, we were still in a state of different buildings being constructed, other schools getting combined. So when this slide was created, we knew there was about 60 going on. So In terms of our demographics, there were 78% of students were economically disadvantaged, right? So we're looking at kids getting free lunch. 12% of our population was special education or receiving special education services. 8% were coded as dyslexic or receiving 504 and or receiving 504 services. 25% is bilingual or ESL students, and we have a one-to-one Chromebook / iPads for all students. And we'll actually go into a little bit deeper dive on that, but I will say that this is a program that had started, I want to say about 5 years ago when Engage Me started, with 4th and 8th grade students being the first grades. And then every year was incrementally adding a grade level. But because of COVID, we kind of got to jump some of all the grades. So now we are fully one-to-one as of last year. Did I miss any updates for us?
No, you just need to make sure to say that Eric has been the superhero in making sure that all of our students have gotten those Chromebooks. Him and his little group over there working with these devices has really helped our district to get where we are today.
And I will say we are on year 7 now of
Yes.
one-to-one initiatives. Time flies when you're having fun. So our district has always been a visionary when it comes to that, and believed in the power of devices in students' hands. So it's been between iPads and Chromebooks, we've had quite a bit for our students.
Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the 2 different departments a little bit and their different roles. And then also, as later on as we have our conversation, you'll see how those roles are going to interact and engage with each other. So when we talk about instructional technology, we're looking at technology integration training and teachers, or for teachers, to support the development of student skills and academic success. So like Mesha was saying, we want to make sure you're comfortable, but we've purchased these things for a reason. They're not just there so we can say we have all the cool gadgets. We felt there was value in them to help our students succeed. So we want to make sure you're doing that. So it's really helping to make sure that teachers are pushing their own skill sets and helping the students develop their skills as well. For the Ysleta Independent School District, we refer to our instructional technology as the Innovative Learning Department, which I think is just a brilliant name. And under that, of course, we've talked with several of our what several of those roles are. And then also every campus has an IT specialist. So this is an instructional technology specialist. Now they will have other duties as assigned, as everybody in education always does. But one of their primary functions is to help support those teachers in that tech integration that we spoke about earlier. And we'll actually go into a little bit of some of the other things that they do in our conversation. In terms of assistive technology, our assistive technology specialist position is seated underneath the special education department. What we do is assistive technology really is there for those students that are receiving assistive technology services through their IEP. But of course, we always take phone calls and assist for those students that are receiving services through 504 as best as we can help those campuses if they need some additional, equipment, training, assistance. But primarily our focus will first be to hit those kids under the SPED coding. For the Ysleta district, the AT specialist is responsible for campus implementation of the students' AT services as determined by the IEP committee, but it's not just, when it was me, it's not just me going in, making sure every single kid has a piece of equipment that needs it. There are kids that I would work with directly. Often I was working with other service providers that were acting as that AT contact for that IEP committee. So maybe it was a speech therapist, occupational therapist. Sometimes it was one of the teachers that was working with the student directly. If they needed equipment or training, they were contacting me and I was providing those services as needed, depending on what it was. All right. So we're going to kind of go back in time a little bit and talk about how all of this began and how our AT and our IT teams really just kind of started to become a little bit of a one unit team. And I'm going to just kind of tell my story, and then I'm going to have Eric and Mesha jump in and say whether or not I'm lying or not. So when I started as the AT specialist, I did not actually have all the same permissions and responsibilities as an instructional technology person. And I really don't have all the responsibilities, but I certainly do have all the permissions. And that was one of the biggest things that I made sure to have happen when I took over that position. It's not as big of a deal as it is now because we have so many kids with devices and they're Chrome and you don't have to worry about installation. But when I started, I had a kid on a computer or a laptop that might need a printer installed. And then it would have to be me to call the IT person to get that printer installed, and they don't have time to do that. And I was right there, but it was just so frustrating. So we wanted to make sure that that was something that we could do. So now that is a role of the assistive technology specialist, excuse me, to be able to do some of those things in terms of those administrative roles that the IT person can, because I know that the IT person has enough on their plate, and if I can just make those quick fixes, I do that. But they don't just give me the keys to the kingdom without some of the responsibilities of those, which means down at the bottom where you see those ITS monthly meetings, yes, that meant that I was part of those trainings, those meetings, when new software was coming out, when new procedures were being rolled out. I was in the know on those as well, because if I was going to have if I was going to kind of act like an IT in certain ways, I certainly needed to be able to respond appropriately as they would. I did also mention here in our slides the Tech Fair and the TNTC, and that's really kind of where we started to share a lot of the information. I think that's where I know probably within the first year or two, the previous director of the IT department or innovative learning had asked me to be a part of their tech fair. And this is a really cool tech fair. They would have all the vendors come and bring their software and their, the monitors and the science kits and the different software. And they said, well, we think you should have a booth because, you do tech on campus and we want people to know about it. So, I had whatever was left in my office. And so if you're like me and your AT equipment, you're looking at some very, very old, switches. And maybe if you're lucky, you have a remote control car that you can play with the switches so they can actually see it do something. Maybe I had like a pen reader or something like that. But it was a nice way for me to start introducing myself, letting the ITS people know who I was. They could start putting a face to a name that they would get in those emails. And then from there, it grew to also participating in the teachers. I'm sorry, I'm going to always pronounce it wrong, but it's not the TNTC anymore. What is it?
It's now the Teach conference.
It's the Teach. So it is a big, huge teachers technology conference. It is amazing. We get people from all over the city and the region to participate. And they made it a very specific point to make sure that special education and assistive technology were represented in those sessions. They would either ask specifically for like a SPED track, or hey, we'd really like something on this specific type of software because that's what people are asking for. So we always made sure that those were part of those conferences. And it was always a great time for me to learn, and again, to have that networking and being able to make those connections with those teachers. Did I miss anything on that one? Anything else you want to add?
I just want to commend you for the work that you did when you were here, because you were open to everything, and I think that's really, really important too, is that you had such a hunger to learn. Not that we had all the answers, because we certainly did not, but you were okay, how do I do this and how do I do this, and you were so willing just to take what we gave you and run with it for your kids. And I think that's big.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, yeah. So we want to talk a little bit about that communication across departments. And I think that's also been a big key component. So, it's one thing to be part of the team, but when you have a big district like ours, that also means we have several departments that are dealing with technology, dealing with special education, dealing with gen ed, dealing with gifted. Because we're Texas, we like to break everything up into everybody gets something in terms of different departments. And so, Eric, I want you to talk a little bit about how all these different departments communicate with each other.
Absolutely. So I think a big part of it is that communication is key. And as Jessica mentioned, she was part of so many of the different things that we hosted, but it didn't just happen overnight. That communication was part of what happened and make those bridges and those relationships happen. As you see here, the first one you'll see there, which is our assessment, our research, evaluation, and assessment, or area as we like to call them. It's all about testing, and so how testing fits into it. And so in order for us to provide devices for students, we got to make sure that we can provide a device that will work for testing and that will work for online services, and that is generally available to every student, including those with special education. We had to make sure that part of this conversation was that the device was accessible across all realms and not just for a regular traditional student. If you think of the Hardware and Software Acquisition Standards Committee, that's a group of people that meet across the district. And so we've got people from like Mesha Daniel, who's our innovative learning specialist, to Jessica, who was our AT specialist, to our TIS department, or our Technology Information Systems department, who actually dig deep into the hardware component of our district. And so these meetings were intended to evaluate any and all resources that our district would purchase. I think it's important to note that this communication and make sure that we don't necessarily just waste money, because it's a difficult task to be able to choose a device that works for every single student or employee or every single person that touches your district. And so this Hardware and Software Acquisition Standards Committee was a big push to getting us to that point, to being able to say, yes, let's evaluate a device, let's push it out to a campus, let's understand what that feedback is like, to make sure that we're putting our money into the right thing. You'll also see things like the Textbook Adoption Committee that also meet to ensure, again, we've got online textbooks for all of our students in our district now, not just as a result of the pandemic, but that's just the way manufacturers are going. And so we've got to make sure that whatever we purchase, every single thing is compatible so that we don't have to purchase something else. That's always the most difficult thing, is that when you're trying to implement something, everything works, and then you say, oh, but we need this other thing. And so you kind of just have this cascade effect of spending more and more and more and more. And that last one, like I said, that website accessibility, the district even provides tools for our campuses to make sure that our websites are accessible to every single type of reader, and every single type of visitor, because it's important, not just for compliance, but just for sheer necessity. We want to make sure that everybody who visits our district websites, our campus websites, everything, it's up to code and it's up to standard. And that's just the vision of the district. So, we strive to maintain that positive percentage and making sure that our readability is up there for all forms of readers and people who access our website. So it's important that we establish those connections, but don't feel intimidated to the point where you think this happens overnight, because it certainly doesn't. It took years for us to establish these kinds of things in relationships, to the point where our departments are really well intermingled among the others. We are not silos. We are really well connected because it's just what's required for our students.
Yeah. Just to kind of give everybody a scope, and when we say how many years, when I started with Ysleta, I was the AT specialist for about 12 years. I want to say probably I started getting involved with assessment in the area team, as we like to call them, probably pretty quickly after I started with them, as in my position. I would say maybe a couple of years into it is when I actually started creating some materials for them that would get sent out and go from there. What followed after that was then, it's actually almost kind of in a chronological order we listed here. I then joined the Hardware Software Acquisition Committee. And then I want to say probably actually around the same time I had joined the Textbook Adoption Committee. And then probably in the last 3 or 4 years that I was there is when I joined the website committee. So, yeah, like we said, we built these relationships over time. And I think part of what really helped was because I was willing to kind of take a step forward, but then they were also, a lot of these departments were really ready to open the door to and say, hey, we know that, we need to meet some needs and some people were missing. How can we do that? And so lines of communication were really pretty quickly open when we saw the opportunity, we took it. All right. So we want to talk a little bit about purchasing, because I know the last time we had chatted about this too, and we were talking about the hardware and software, because it used to not be called the Software Standards Acquisition Committee too. but let's talk, we just want to talk a little bit about what are some of those things that we need to look for when we purchase those devices and software. So Eric, I want you to just kind of give us a little bit of how we do that and what's involved in that.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, one of the big components is making sure that it's accessible for all, and not just a traditional student, not just our regular, type of demographic, but also our special education, our English language learners, all different types of learners that we see here in our district, especially because we're a border town district. So one of the things that we do is we provide a lot of these test cases you'll see there. We provide these demos and samples to our students, our teachers, to get that idea, that feedback, and to understand if it's something that is viable for an entire district. You'll see there that it's a multi-department process because we have to have it, checked by the network team to make sure that it's got all of our future components and not just whatever we have today. Special education, does it have the ports necessary? So for example, if we're going to be connecting to headphones, monitors, that kind of thing, does that device support having that ability to be able to do that? When it comes to our department, does it meet what we need for all of our academic resources? Can we actually run our testing applications on it? And really it's almost planning with the end in mind, because you want a device that is going to last you for those many years. And if something new comes up, is that device ready to handle it? And so part of when we do these purchases is thinking like that, is thinking of the different steps of, okay, it's your turn to test it, what is your feedback? It's your turn to test it, what is your feedback? And come together and say, okay, is this device going to last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line? And so that's part of what the need for our devices and what we consider when we try and purchase these.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you. Well said. Anything to add on that one, Mesha?
But I think he said it very well. I know that my own kids have done some of the testing. I'm trying to. I'm thinking about the times when he's have them try to break it. So that's what they attempted to do. They attempted to try to shut the device down completely, where they wouldn't be able to use it at all. So, but they couldn't do it sometimes. Some of our devices were really good, and other devices, yeah, no, this one's, they got on too many web pages and it just froze up or whatever. So that is part of it, because we know that kids are going to do that, and my kids are notorious for doing that. So.
Well, and Eric had mentioned things about different ports when we first rolled out the Chromebooks. What was funny, well, it was funny, but it was just one of those things we didn't think about. And now we think about it for sure, which is when we rolled out the Chromebooks, we had students that were very eager to use them. But for some of our students that were visually impaired, the screens were a little small. And so we said, oh, well, great. We've got a whole bunch of monitors around everywhere. We could just use those, except we had to hope and pray that they had a HDMI port. And then B, did anybody actually have any extra HDMI cables? And so for the first year or two, it was just trying to make sure, does everybody have a cable? Does everybody have a port that'll work for it? That was one of those things that we ran into. Another tech piece that we ran into that was kind of interesting when we started rolling out the Chromebooks in terms of needs were external mice. So for I would get several students that would have problems with the trackpad on a Chromebook, either just because of the sensitivity, just for whatever reason, the trackpads were very difficult for some of our students. However, if we could just give them a regular mouse that they could either plug in, or it could, have a dongle to it, no problem whatsoever. It was just the trackpad itself that was giving them problems. So it was always, asking all my fellow ITS campus teachers, hey, if you've got a spare mouse, let me know. Or hey, does, and a lot of times they would say, oh, do you need a mouse? Yeah, like I ordered like 4 for all these teachers and only 2 of them got picked up, or, they had all these extra mice lying around. So it was great for me, because then I could just kind of say, oh, if anybody asked me, I could just say, talk to your ITS first, because usually they've got a couple extra spare and I'm already out at the beginning of the year. So, but definitely. All right, and I just want to mention, we are taking questions. I know we just kind of dove right in and didn't really explain that when we started, because I was just excited to talk to these two people, because even though I've worked with them for forever and this is info I know, I always learn something new, or I always get a different perspective. So if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll try and pick it up as we go, or if we need to, we can hit them up at the end too. So please don't be shy. We love to chat about this stuff. So. All right, and then Mesha, you're going to kind of talk to us a little bit. For those that don't know, Ysleta Independent School District is going towards universal design for learning. So when we say UDL, so this idea of trying to design and plan with the goal in mind for all students to meet their needs and to make progress. And so Mesha, I wanted you to talk a little bit about how through Innovative Learning Department, through the stuff that we've kind of talked about a little bit here already, how do we help support that journey of universal design for learning?
Well, first of all, we have to know our stuff, right? So, I mean, we have to know what these tools are going to be able to do for not just SPED students, but for all students, right? And you actually brought this first tool to us. We had heard about it and we had done a few things with it, but then it was like, well, we're going to go ahead and we're thinking about purchasing this for the entire district. And we're just like, okay. And, you know, Snap and Read is such a great tool, and we are still, you know, trying to get more people on board of using it. It has been growing and growing, you know, especially since this time of us being, you know, COVID, of people being at home. But these two tools right here have been just really like game changers really for us, for, you know, reading PDFs and reading web pages and all the different things that I mean, I could go on and on about what these two tools can actually do. But in order for us, that'd be Larry and I, we're mostly the trainers, to actually turn this around, we have to really kind of know what they can do first. So, you know, you would bring, hey, what do you think about this? And I've never seen that before. Well, I guess I better get busy and learn how to use this so I can turn it around. And that is something that, you know, again, us working together, and sometimes, you know, you would show us some really cool things, like, oh my God, I didn't even know we could do that. It was so awesome. And so you were like our trainer sometimes. Of course, our Google Suite, we've got a lot of tools in there, and more coming all the time that are made not just for, again, our typical student. You know, we've got, of course, like the voice typing, which is great for anybody, but especially for some of our children that are more verbal and have a harder time with the typing. We've got different Zoom features that we can put onto just about any type of Google tool that's out there. Microsoft now has the embedded reader, or the within everything, including Minecraft, everything that you use now within Microsoft, you can use that reader, Immerse Reader, I guess it is. And so getting to, again, we have to spread the word about some of this stuff, because it's not just like common knowledge that the voice typing is there, or that, you know, the Zoom features are there, or we have to kind of know where they are first, so we can spread that word out. And sometimes we don't even know that some of those features are there. And again, that's where we're working closely with you. You were able to share some of that knowledge with us. So that's kind of how we ran with that.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit also in terms of, you know, sharing the vision and talking about UDL and all these different pieces of software and tools. I know for me, one of the best ways for me to learn about not just what's on the screen, but also some of the other tools that we had available was part of those trainers. Yes. Trainer trainings that we would do, mm-hmm. You know, those monthly meetings. And it was really a great time for not only for me to network with everybody and put a face to a name and get a chance to kind of really let them know, like, hey, I'm not just the person that's bugging you about this, whatever it is I'm bugging you about. But we would get a chance to just share so much cool stuff, you know, like, hey, this is how you use Edpuzzle to make your blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, because they all knew I was in the room, they, you know, immediately would have to think about, you know, what kind of accessibility issues maybe we face, or how can we get around those? Because, you know, certain tools we don't want to just completely dump because it doesn't have every single accessibility feature yet. I always say yet, because one day they're all going to have them all, but it's just making sure that we make those right choices make the right tool for what we need at that moment, right? Because we may have something else that could work just as well. So Snap and Read was a good example of that. When we first rolled it out, it had a little bit of PDF annotation. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It at least would let you fill out a worksheet okay. And so I know a lot of campuses had purchased Kami right around the same time we had purchased Snap and Read. So it was a little bit of a harder sell for us to say like, hey, you know, this really sweet PDF thing that you have that like puts glitter and everything else all over this page. Whereas Snap and Read, I can't do glitter, but it's going to read it really nicely and translate it into whatever language you want. Was still a hard sell for some people. But over time, when they realize like, hey, I'm not paying for the Snap and Read, and they've updated their PDF annotation to include, so I can put signatures, I can put shapes on it, I can put the little stamps on it, you know, and I mean, Snap and Read is just always updating constantly. And so it was one of those things too, where we could kind of make the sell that way too, to go like, hey, it does these things that you want to. It may not have this other thing, but really, how often are you using that other thing? You know, you don't need to put the glitter on the page. I promise. It's not going to ruin your whole lesson plan. So that was one of the neat things. But I have to say too, one of the best stories I get to tell people. When I was working for Ysleta, and I was and we were talking about, you know, well, how do you guys work so well? And you know, your departments seem, you know, in tangent, and you get good communication and feedback from your ITS. And I say, yeah, I said, it's great because I know things started to change really drastically, and that we were never going to go back. When I would sit in some of those meetings and somebody else was talking about the accessibility features, and it wasn't because I asked them, you know, like that was something that they would bring up on their own, or they would say, oh, and it does this, and it was, you know, and it wasn't that I had to point it out, or I didn't have to go, well, what about this? You know, it was something that was already part of their thought process when they were looking at these tools. And so for me, that's when I was like, oh, we've really got something going here. And you know, I don't want to say we're in the home stretch, because you know, it's a never ending journey, but I really felt like it was never going to kind of take like a 180 and go backward. All right, so we want to talk a little bit, because I don't think we have any questions yet. So because we did say this is a journey and this took us several years, we just put down just a couple first steps and final thoughts. And I just, instead of me just reading these out, I'm just curious for you, Eric, what would kind of be your first step suggestion for somebody? You can cheat off this.
Honestly, it's send out those introductory emails. It's about that, because you don't know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And honestly, having somebody to bounce ideas off of, having somebody to communicate with and say, you know, this might not be your specialty, but I think I can pick your brain on something. It's a powerful tool. Even if it's just a onesies and twosies until you develop that relationship, knowing that you have somebody else that you can communicate with makes things a lot easier. So I highly recommend introduce yourself to as many people as you can that you work with across different districts, across different companies, across different platforms, because that's just how you get things done sometimes. So definitely don't be afraid to send that first email. Even if you don't get a response, that's okay, because there's somebody else who will. So don't be afraid to introduce yourself to multiple people.
And I would also say in the world of education, and really crazy inboxes that I would see people have, they may not respond, but they probably actually read it. They just haven't gotten back to you yet. I know several people that always be the case, and I'll be like, oh, I sent you, oh yeah, I've been reading all your stuff, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, well, great. Now I don't have to catch you up on all of this. So yeah, no, I agree. So Mesha, what's a final thought or a first step you have?
Well, again, we're going back to those introductions, but also, again, being open. You know, I think that's, we all have our eyes on our prize that's right in front of us. But sometimes what's right in front of us, you know, we need to look beyond that, because that's where the goal really lies. And I again, I'm giving you lots of props today, but you deserve all of it because you worked really hard here and you did an awesome job here and we miss you so much. I can't even tell you. But you were so open to, you know, anything that we had, you know, and you were always at every single one of our trainings. There was never like, well, I can't make it. You were always there just to offer us support, but also, you know, to learn. And that said a lot, you know, because you were like, I want to learn. I want to learn everything I can because I want to turn this around for students. And that's what it's all about. Keep the eye in mind, which is our students, right?
And I think for me, and I'll just kind of speak to why I felt it was important for me to go to those trainings and things like that is I wanted to make sure that this is going to sound terrible and a little cliche, but I wanted to be able to speak the language of what those ITS teachers were talking about. But I also wanted to, while I could not fully live their experience, I could at least speak to it a little bit more, especially when I would talk to, you know, unfortunately, a lot of times some of our special education teachers still were feeling out of the loop, either in trainings or getting information from the campus, because, you know, it's its own different little thing. And if you don't plan for it properly in terms of how you're going to provide your team train or your teacher trainings and your communications, it's very easy for some of those teachers to kind of get lost and fall through the cracks. But I felt that because going to those trainings, I could speak a little bit more to what could actually be holding up the ITS person, or what the ITS person needed from the special education teacher to get XYZ done. And I don't want to say that I was trying to act as a liaison, but I think it helped the teacher feel a little bit more connected to the campus when I could say, oh yeah, I know such and such, he did this, blah, blah, blah. Or, well, I know right now that the ITSs are expected to do for inventory. So that's probably what the delay is in him not hitting your campus right now. And so once they kind of heard that they had somebody kind of that could, you know, fill in the gaps for them if they didn't feel comfortable approaching their ITS person directly, I think that really helped a lot for them too. So that was one of my big benefits for me, to be able to go to all of those trainings. And because then I would know, like, oh, they're doing inventory this week, or oh, there's this big, huge, you know, we're doing the hour of codings coming up this month, so this is going to be the expectation over here. Or I know there was like it's like a tech fair for the students, the showcase, that's what it was.
Yeah.
You know, there was like the big showcase. So, you know, because I knew of those things, and those aren't things that ITS teachers are necessarily telling the rest of the campus, because that's not real, it's more of an interdepartment thing. It's not a whole campus thing, but because I could kind of say, oh, well, this is why they haven't gotten to you on this, or this is why they ask for this particular information. I think it really helped make that connection for them. So for me, I think some of the things that I always want to remind people is just say yes, even if it sounds really silly or not your job. I mean, don't say yes to everything and you know, completely overwork yourself, but don't limit yourself because you think that's not what you're supposed to do. I think that was one of the biggest things for me, and I think that's also been a big help. And that's not just as the AT person coming. I think that's something for the IT person especially too, because I think it's very easy for an ITS person, because they have so much to do. Some of them have classes on top of managing devices and doing class, you know, and doing PD training for the teachers, and, you know, maintaining the websites, and, you know, I mean, it's a huge long laundry list. But I think because I was able to run into so many of those teachers that, you know, I would ask them for something that, you know, it could very easily, they could have said, that's not my job and go away. You have your own special funding for that and you don't need me. But they said yes. And our students were all the better for it. You know, we had a student who was visually impaired, and the VI teacher had contacted me, and she's like, well, you know, we need 3D, or we need a, I can't think of the name of it now, but she needed like a textured model of the cell for biology. And so normally, you know, she would order from Lighthouse for the Blind to get the materials. She said, but it takes weeks and weeks and weeks. And, and I just got the syllabus, so I didn't know I needed to order this. She's like, what do you think we can do? And I was like, oh, I know exactly what we can do, because the school that the student was in, I was already had a really nice connection with the IT teacher. And I also knew, because of my conversations and my trainings that I attended, I learned that every single campus had a 3D printer. And I was like, I know that there's a printer on this campus and they're going to be able to help us out. And I knew the person already. And so I called him up and I said, hey, if I give you a file, can you print this out for a student? And he had already helped me with the student for some iPad issues we had. So he was like, oh yeah, totally, we can do that. And so we printed up this really cool 3D model of the cell. And so I put him in connection with the BI teacher. So then that way, as the syllabus changed, they could just make those requests and get them the files that they needed. And it was just something really easy that they go, oh yeah, I totally can do that for you. I mean, he could have very easily said, those 3D printers are specifically for the robotics class, or they're specifically for this. You have to, there could have been any number of legit reasons why he could have said no, but he said yes, and we were able to get that material for our students so much faster. And then that led to really cool conversations that we were going to have, in terms of like, well, what else can we do with these printers? Because you have all these printers and you're not doing anything with them. Let's make some cool stuff out of them, and not just necessarily accessible materials, which are good too, but what are some other things we could use for all of our students, and have those conversations. And so that's always my thing to people, is just, if it's within your means, at least a little bit, and you don't feel like it's going to completely overtax you, go ahead and say yes, especially if it's an easy yes. Just easy asks, always say yes. So I don't think we have any questions yet. Any other things? We already talked about it not being overnight. Training and supports for all departments. I think that's a big one. I think just making sure everybody's on the same page, especially when we would have big rollouts and materials, and letting everybody know exactly what the requirements are. I know with our engagement, when we first started rolling out the Chromebooks, it was very hard for me to have to remind people that, the fourth graders had these Chromebooks, but then when they go to fifth grade, they weren't going to get them. So they needed to document. So that way we knew if it was going to be in their IEP, that would be taken care of. But again, it was making sure that everybody was communicating on those lines. So they weren't just saying, well, where's the Chromebook? And I said, well, what grade is he in? He's like, well, he's in fifth grade. I said, did you not listen when I told you? So just trying to make sure that they understood across the board. Any other first steps we can think of?
I think you hit them all.
All right. So yeah. So I would say if you are a campus-based person, hit up your AT, or and I know different school districts are set up different ways. Sometimes you just have one person per campus. Sometimes they have one person per whole district. Sometimes they're not even called the AT person. Maybe you just have an OT or PT or VI person, but just, make sure you're making those connections with everybody. So we do want to just lightly touch on the Center for Inclusive Technology and Education Systems. This is a program that's coming out of CAST, and we wanted to talk about them because it is a great resource for you if you are interested in this world and journey of inclusive tech, where you're looking at combining assistive technology and educational technology and informational technology, making sure that all of those things are being and increasing their effective use of those by the students and their families, because we want to build that school capacity, that district capacity to build those sustainable ecosystems. So that's really the big goal of CITES program. And we want to mention it because you will notice this map we have of the site district partners. We have a map of the United States. There are several that are in yellow, and those are the framework development sites. So these are sites that are, or states that are coming together to actually create some documentation for districts and schools in terms of, what do we do first? How do we, what are our next steps, and what are some things we need to think about? And then the orange states, and Texas is included because it's us, and I think another district or two, is the knowledge development states. So these are districts that they contacted directly because they had experienced, developing these inclusive ecosystems, and are pulling those stories and their data and their knowledge to help develop that framework. So we are listed as one of their knowledge development districts. So we wanted to make sure we gave a shout out to Ysleta ISD for that. We are encouraging you, if you want to take a peek at their website, and I see that Mark has put their main page in there, and that's a great way to get to it. You'll be able to get to all these key questions to ask when you're creating that inclusive ecosystem, the 5 things that AT leaders need to know about inclusive systems, 5 things that ed tech leaders need to know. So that's one of the other things I really like about what they're trying to do over at sites, is what I think we try to do as well, is it's not just Jessica has to come to the innovative learning department to get something done. Innovative learning department knows that they need to come to me to get something done too. It was very symbiotic. It was, it was definitely a going both ways. It wasn't just because Jessica says this, we have to do that, or, oh, I guess she has to sit at the table for compliance issues. We really did look at it from the approach of how do we help our students out, and what do we do, what's best for them in the long run. And I think that's really what's benefited us in terms of that future forward. All right, so we have a question, and I promise I won't talk. I'm going to read it out, and then I'm going to have our 2 experts here answer it for us. So it says, I work as a user experience strategist for a curriculum publisher. Ooh, lovely. I would love to hear how you both assess potential curriculum products for accessibility compliance, as well as measure that solution after purchasing and implementing once it's in the classroom. And what are some of the most common issues that you have with purchased curriculum products? So I will let you guys take it away a little bit, and if I need to, I'll jump in.
You want to go first, Eric? Sure.
So I think it's a step-by-step process. So like the first part is simply, what are we purchasing? When you're talking about specifically to curriculum, are we talking about we're talking about textbook, or are we talking about actual implementation in the classroom, or we're talking about models, etc. Speaking to some of it is really the content base. So are we talking physical content curriculum, meaning we've got textbooks, meaning we've got packets, meaning we've got etc., or are we talking about online content? Because there's a difference in terms of how we evaluate those. If you're talking about physical media that we will be giving to teachers and students, then it's about, okay, what is it a generic one for every student type copy where there's no differences? Then comes the issue of how do we adapt this to a student with special circumstances. So if we're talking about visually impaired, if we're talking about handicapped students, we have different types of disabilities. How do we specifically cater now that curriculum to that student? And so when we come to this checklist, it can be a bit of a stretch to think, okay, how's it going to be fit for one student? Because you don't know what kind of student is going to be in your classroom at that end of the day. You may get a brand new student from one day to the next, and now you've got a new special scenario. But part of it is, okay, are we able to adjust this curriculum for this type of student? If it's online, part of this is that visually impaired and also disabled. As Mesha mentioned, some of our tools that we have here is the read aloud, a lot of our context-aware reading, being able to read the type of pages. So we've got to make sure that if it's PDF based, that we've got some type of reader that can actually read from that context page, and it's not just an image where it can't read and capture that info, because then we have no tools to be able to provide for that student, and then that curriculum essentially becomes worthless to them. You got to make sure that it's accessible on that end, that it works with the different readers, the different devices, whether it's on an iPad that some of our students use, whether it's on a Chromebook, whether it's on a personal device at home, because we do have homebound students that may be using something at their house that may not necessarily be something we're providing. And so our expectation is still that the student can participate just like if they were having anything that we would provide as a district. In terms of once it's in the classroom, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna jump off on that a little bit. We do have, and and I'm only going to speak to what I know before I left, so this may have changed. What we do have in terms of any kind of specific compliance, because we are the state of Texas, for our federal grants and programs, when things get purchased through that department, they are required to follow the Texas compliance of accessibility. You can go to TEA and get more information on that. Part of what I was doing with the textbook adoption committee as well is we included some additional areas to consider. So when the textbook adoption committees would review materials, they were given like a little, oh, my brain just blanked on the name of the form, but we had a form that they would go through, rank different, did it serve this purpose? Does it have, is it online? If it's online, how can you access it? All these different things. And we did include on that form as well, some specific accessibility guidelines. I wouldn't say they were the most advanced, but it was also a way for us to make sure that those committee members were having that conversation, that they could have it fairly comfortably on their own. So it was talking about things like, if there's videos, do you have captions for those videos? Are all the materials available to the students, downloadable or things like that, so we did have some basic accessibility compliance on that form, and I think it might be available on the website. I'm not sure if it got pulled down or not. That we included. So that was part of our compliance in terms of that accessibility compliance. Now, in terms of measuring for that solution, so after it was purchased, now that's something where I don't know that we've ever tracked that data, or at least if we did, I did not get a chance to fully participate in that follow-up with the textbook adoption committees, where they would look at like, hey, we purchased blah, 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 company X's book. How did implementation go? I could say off the top of my head, just from talking with teachers, if it was a book, nobody was using it. If it was online, you had a better shot of somebody actually implementing the materials. So I can speak to that at least a little bit, but I think we were just starting to get to where we were going to try and collect that implementation data to follow up.
And just on top of that, I also think it's about the user experience as well. Like if I'm looking at something and I've got two tools and one does a lot of stuff, but it's really difficult to get through. I always have a teacher in my mind, and I'm not going to tell you her name, but she's a teacher that I've taught with for many years and was very tech unsavvy. And she's the one that I always go to in my head. Okay, how would this experience be for this teacher? Right. And so that's what when I base anything, what, this is super easy, or, oh, I don't know, this might be a little too much for some of our teachers, because not everybody is going to be a pro. Not everybody's going to be, right there at the beginner level either. But we want to make sure that we are able to service all of our teachers as well as our students. But it's really important that everybody has that good user experience with it. If I've got two tools that can do the same thing as this one tool that's really hard, but these other two tools are so easy, I'm going to go with the two tools every time. Yeah, it might be one more click, but if it's way easier for them to use, I'm going to want to use them.
And I think that speaks to the common issues that, when we're purchasing things, if it just becomes so cumbersome to access all those wonderful tools, then it's not doing anybody any good.
No.
Were there any other oh yeah, I was going to ask. Go for it, Eric.
I will say that part of it is especially in recent, in about the year, we've started looking at analytics a lot. And when I say a lot, I really do mean a lot. As a district, we are very aware of our special funding, especially as a result of the pandemic. And we're aware of the amount of resources that teachers and students have available in their hands. And so whatever we do, we want to make sure we choose wisely. And so with those analytics, we're able to tell, hey, we've got 2,800 teachers. How many of those teachers are using it? Is it 100%? Is it 90%? And then we could then identify, okay, that 10%, who is it? Or it's talking about same with students. We as a district use Clever, and we're able to identify, okay, how many of our students are logging in via Clever? Are we at 90%? Are we at 100%? And who is that demographic who's not logging in? So any platform that can provide a district with robust analytics will go a very far way, because that's the only real way you're able to measure that success, aside from getting those phone calls and saying, hey, I am this type of teacher, how do I use this, because I really don't know, or I didn't get trained adequately. Which, I'm happy to say that even though we do get those phone calls, I don't think there'll ever be a day when we won't. We've really minimized that as a result of that communication. We've really come down to say, you know what, let me make sure that any population is well trained, that user experience is well set up, because it helps solve a lot of the stuff. If you can set it up the first time and they have a great experience, you'll never hear from them again.
And then they will use it as well. They're not going to put it away.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And so just a quick follow up. So if we do run into any issues, do we go back to the publisher and say, do better fix it, or do we take it upon yourself to fix it for the student? And I think it's a little bit of both. I know for especially when you're in the moment, and sometimes things get purchased and they fell through the cracks. Like that's why I kind of jokingly said we had changed the name to the Hardware Software Acquisitions Committee, because some things got purchased that maybe we weren't all sure of what was going on there, but that's okay, because we did the best with what we got, and we did fix what we needed to for our students. But I know even if as I'm fixing things, I will contact my publishers or my vendors and I say, hey, can you do something about this? And usually depending on what it is, they'll either say, oh yeah, an update is coming, or it's a feature that we will definitely see the following year. And it's one of those things, especially when you're looking at like the adoption committees and things, if they don't see the features they want, they're not going to vote for it, and only the thing that gets voted for is the things that are going to get purchased through the districts.
And
So
I will say we really don't, especially our district, and I'm sure many of you are the same, but we don't take no for an answer. That's just not really the way we work, because at the end of the day, it's a resource for our students, and it could be an issue. We want to make sure that every single student, especially in a remote year like we had last year, no may not be an answer for that student that's at home, that does not have access to that teacher right next to them, whose parent might have been working throughout the pandemic, who didn't have another hand to hold them through. That just simply is not an option for us. And so absolutely, we try and work really well with our manufacturers, our vendors, our publishers, anybody we can directly, because it really matters. Not only do we improve the system for ourselves, but by default, we also improve it for anybody else who gets to use it. So, we always take an opportunity to provide feedback to our publishers and to say, this is something that we've experienced and that we've noticed. Please improve this for us. Give us early access to a feature. Make us a beta tester, whatever you need, just so that we can make sure that we're meeting our need. And by default, we're also making that need better for everybody else. So.
All right, well, we have quickly run out of time, but I want to make sure that we show you the Twitter follow, where you can follow Innovative Learning at Twitter. They are at YISD Innovative Learn. Special Education, you can follow them at YISD _SPED. And then we have Eric Buenrostro, I can't talk today, Eric, and then we have Mesha at Mesha Daniel. So you can follow all of them. And of course, you can follow us at Nobility on Twitter for all of our upcoming events as well. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. It was nice to go down memory lane a little bit and hear about some of the exciting things that are coming up in terms of the analytics and the progress being made on some of your other projects. So hopefully we'll see wonderful things from y'all in the future. So with that, let me just remind you that ToolKit Tuesdays is continuing next month on October 5th. Oh, and I forgot to change the title screen on that one. Apologies to Carrie and Nicole. They will actually be talking about assistive technology trends part 1. So there will be a part 1 in October 5th, and then on November 2nd, 7th, it will be part 2. So it'll be a 2-part series on that one starting October 5th. It will be assistive technology trends with Carrie and Nicole. They are from Austin ISD. They have some wonderful, wonderful information for us. It's always a good time with them. Thank you, everyone. If we did not